So, where to begin? Right. Well, it's a day ending in the letter Y. So Duncan's been at war with people, hasn't he? Duncan Thorin Shields, fresh back from holiday and renewed and full of piss and vinegar and fire in the nuts. So he's obviously gone and dropped. He's just been dropping everything, hasn't he? But he dropped a bunch of stuff recently about TheScore Esports, and I thought good place to start the stream would be by kind of talking about them, because for in a rare moment, a rare lapse on Duncan's part, he actually left out some stuff from 2015 I talked about, and I've got a nice video that I made on my YouTube channel, which I'm sure you're all subscribed to, about TheScore Esports and all of the problems that they've had. And, this is nothing new. I mean, I've had nothing but negative experiences with TheScore Esports by and large. And what I mean by that is, as an investigative journalist, I essentially publish the news. I mean, I'm not. It's very hard to not sound arrogant about it, but I think there's levels to the game of journalism, and I think sure it's valid to take somebody else's news and write it up and maybe get other perspectives and just make sure your readership's aware of the general happenings. But I have always aspired to be the best at things I do, and I think the best types of journalists are the ones that essentially break stories people are trying actively to obfuscate and hide, and that's always been what I want to do. And sometimes it's something pathetic like a roster move, no disrespect to anyone that does that, but again, I've always aimed to break the highest kind of stuff, like contract disputes, money, fraud, this sort of stuff, match fixing, obviously. And so what always has happened for me when I'm doing that is TheScore swoop in, right, and they make a video about it, and they go, oh, look at this story that's broke, and very rarely am I named. They're always like, it's in Deserto, or wherever I publish the article, which I get it, you credit the publication, but I think, I don't know, I prefer individual credit, and that's what I do when I talk about journalists. I say the journalist's name from this publication, because as we know, different publications have different levels of reputation. If I said, oh, CNN broke this story, or MSNBC broke this story, you would be like, oh, well, fuck that then. But or Fox. But the reality is, in all of those news outlets, there are good people that do good work. No media outlet is entirely corrupt and entirely without merit. That's part of the problem why you cannot find, people always say, hey, recommend me, what new site do you use? And I go, I use all of them. And they go, well, don't you that means you use the ones that you're calling out for being shit. And I go, yes, this is the problem. It's not a bug, it's a feature. If you want to get the truth, you have to sit down with all of the news sites, look at all of the different levels of spin, and somehow find, the centrifuge within that spin and be okay. So it's difficult, and they know it's difficult, and that's why people get completely fucked over with media mental illness. TheScore essentially take stories I break, give me a little fucking minimal mention, and then what they do is they will interview somebody either I've already interviewed or somebody that has a vested interest and is therefore essentially a biased source of information. And I'll demonstrate some of this in a little bit, but then they'll put a title up going, want to get the truth about what's going on at Astralis? We did. And you go, wait, no. Lots of problems here. First of all, you're implying my report isn't the truth and only coming to TheScore is the truth, which is ridiculous. And second of all, you're taking an article that's critical of Casper Fit, and to get the truth about what Casper Fit's doing wrong behind the scenes, you've interviewed Casper Fit. Come on, mate, this is fucking amateur hour shit, right? So it's the classic example in esports where people think if you go to the horse's mouth, the horse will just tell you all of the facts. Like, oh yeah, we were match fixing, and yeah, the contract's bogus and not legally binding, and yeah, we robbed them players. Like, no, it doesn't work like that at all. But the score repeatedly does this. Why phases lawsuit shit by Tifu's lawyer? Guys, can't you see the problem with this? And evidently not. So anyway, We're not going to get to there just yet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you an exercise, which you're all going to enjoy. And we can just call this The Ravages of Time. Because I talked about this pretty openly way back when. So in 2015, this was early 2015, TheScore had just got started, and they were really over the top. They hired a bunch of bums, right? The usual fucking bums who've been hanging around esports journalism and the esports space for fucking years and achieved nothing, never broken a big story, never wrote a really good article, never had a successful video series, never published a book, just never done anything. And yet they were actively going around essentially telling people they were the new standard for esports journalism. And then on top of that, what they were doing was very aggressively sponsoring tournaments. And so Duncan referred to an instance where they stopped a story. They spiked a story. Spike is what the term they use in journalism. It's like you take the story and you throw it on the floor like you do when you play football. You spike the story. And so they spiked a number of stories because they still wanted to have access to those orgs. And I did a video about it and said, I don't like them sponsoring events. I don't think you can be a true journalistic outlet if you do that. They're arrogant arseholes, and they spike stories so they can get access to interviews. And it was all there, and Duncan must have missed it. If you want to watch this video in your own time, it's called TheScore Media Sponsorships and Coverage Partnerships. It's on my channel. Basically, back in the day, I totally saw all the problems with the score coming, and it came from the top down. I've told this story before, but I don't mind repeating it, and I have got a substantiating tweet. I think it was this one. There's always a tweet, right? So here I was back in 2016 saying, has there ever been a more overbearing sponsorship than TheScore Esports in sports history? And people are like, yeah, maybe DraftKings when they first came in to mainstream sports, maybe Nike. But so people don't realize how bad TheScore Esports was. When they sponsored one of your events, it was like every time there was a break, anytime there was downtime, it would go, TheScore Esports, get TheScore Esports. And like literally, even in the commercial itself, it would say, TheScore about 50 times. Like it was insane, like borderline brainwashing. And so I've told this story before about it. When I ended up hosting the DreamHack event in 2015, so that's even after the fact, I basically came out and said, like this, you do realize that commercials are really overbearing, and when we do a read at DreamHack, we'd like to just make it a bit more integrated into the broadcast instead of me clearly reading off a script and saying the phrase TheScore Esports app 6 times in 6 sentences. And so me and Duncan were doing, we worked that event together. Me and Duncan were doing this back and forth where we'd make jokes about it on the desk, and obviously you can read all about this and more over at TheScore Esports. Download the app today. Have you got your copy, Duncan? And I'd do like a soft throw so Duncan could come in and, boom shakalaka with a ridiculous one-liner. Now, obviously no one wants their company to get roasted, but we obviously understand sponsors are how the fucking sausage gets made. So we're not looking to fucking wreck your company when we have to do a sponsor read. Generally, we'll make fun at people we know who work at the company, whatever it is. And so there was this one thing where the sponsors for that day were fucking the reboot of Jurassic Park and fucking TheScore. And so we came in, and basically, we did the nya 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 nya. That's a dinosaur. Nyam nyam nyam. Right, and we did that, right, and then we had the fucking Score Esports as well. And I went, well, there you go, and be sure to check out Jurassic World. And obviously, you can read about this event and more over at the Score Esports. And Duncan said, and the two are linked because if you like dinosaurs, that old cunt Slasher works over at the Score Esports as well. And so. And I don't even think he said cunt, because Americans get upset about that easily, don't they? But anyway, it was just a straight fire, nice little roast of somebody we knew, happened to work over at TheScore. We didn't think it was harmful at all to their brand or harmful at all to their read. Man alive. Let me tell you, before I even had to fucking sit Loader down, because I think it was that event, DreamHack were already pissed off at me. Let me tell you, this is the untold part of the story. But as I said, since I'm passing through now, I may as well get it all out. The first thing that happened off the back of that was they pulled me and Duncan into a room when a game was on and basically said to us both, like, TheScore have just emailed us. I think it was Greg Khan who did this. I can't remember the exact person, but there was more than one. And they said, TheScore Esport have just fucking emailed us and said if Duncan mentions Slasher again at any other point in the show, they're going to pull the sponsorship. And I went, why? He works there. And they're going, listen, we don't care about anything personal between Duncan and Rod. And I don't even think there was anything personal back there. It might have been the aftermath of On Gamers, like Rod got them banned off Reddit and killed the site. But, you know, at the end of the day, it was just like a bit of light-hearted banter between industry veterans. It was nothing malicious. It certainly was nowhere near as... Like, if you think about where Duncan is now, Duncan actually used to stay within the lines back then. Now he doesn't give a fuck. You know, but back then he used to be fine. And so anyway, I was like, listen, there's no way they're going to pull a sponsorship from an event because Duncan's made a joke. And they were going, look, we just don't care about it. We don't want any drama. Just do the reads. So I already knew they're a bunch of humorless cunts. And then DreamHack being DreamHack, one of the most dog-shit, wretched companies in the whole of esports, populated by rats and scum and people who would sell their own mothers just to keep the esports dream alive for another year. All of them absolute vermin to a man. They fucking pulled me up and then said, why'd you let Duncan do that? And I'm like, what do you mean? And he went, why do you let Duncan do these things on our show? You're the host. You should control Duncan. And they fucking chewed me up for like 20 minutes because I can't walk into Duncan's mind. That's how shit DreamHack are, right? And now you also understand when they let someone backstage to essentially beat me up over a joke they misunderstood because they are educationally subnormal. Now you might understand a little bit more about some of the run-ins we'd had with DreamHack and why I was the guy that was getting sacrificed to the almighty esports gods. Because they are scum. So, anyway, back to TheScore. The other thing they said is like they'd never do TMZ, they'd never do BuzzFeed. And basically they started publishing like lists and what they call listicles, right? And so this really pissed people off that I pointed this out. So here it is, just to give you an idea about how petty they were back then. So I can't link you the article, but it was just like, wow, is someone hospitalized? Top 5 replacements or something like that, right? Oh yeah, it was when Insect broke his leg. That was it. And they were like, what's gonna happen now? Basically, I said, like, they did like a real shit TMZ headline for it. Like, and then like suggested solutions to the problem. And they got fucking memed on. But you can see Slasher straight in there when he was at TheScore, you know. I enjoyed your YouTube Twitch report and subsequent Fwiz gifs. For those that don't know, that was when I accidentally broke a big tech story. I can't remember what it was. Might have been the launch of YouTube Gaming. And I asked for a statement from YouTube, and they sent me a gif of that girl going, And so the story was huge. I had to go on American news to talk about it. But obviously Slash is like, your story sucks. Right? But yeah, somebody fucking memed on them and created this, just to give you an idea of the zeitgeist towards the score at the time. And this remains just a fantastic meme. TheScore Esports, now just 69p. There's me, pot noodle and a wank, I don't know why. There's my friend Broken Shard from the old First Blood podcast. I memed my way into LOL and nobody realised. Insect hospitalised after breaking his leg during rehearsals for the Demacia Cup. Mark Merrill down there. I don't know what I'm saying, but who cares? LOL. And there's Duncan. My parka is lined with the scalps of Redditors. That's a fantastic meme. We even memed better back then, guys. We even memed better back then. There was that. But now, let's also talk about all of the plagiarism that they did, because I know this is something that hasn't been made a bigger deal of. Now, Duncan has done a great job actually over there. I'd even forgotten about some of this, but just so you guys know, there have been three separate instances where they have actually just out and out plagiarized someone's work and passed it off as their own. I.e., somebody has scripted a video and they just take that video's idea and use all of the examples and quotes that person gathered for the video, or somebody writes an article and they go and they did it. Now, once, I'll tell you in all honesty, when you're running one of these sites, as I have, remember, I've been an editor-in-chief, now I'm an editor-at-large, I'm at-large, etc., right? You will never be able to stop all instances of plagiarism, because that presupposes you have seen every other piece of work in existence in real time, and you immediately would recognize it because it's made that type of impression on you. So one of the things that used to happen quite often when I was running CADRED, we'd hire writers, and then I'd say to a writer, can you write up that story that's just broke over there? Forrest has joined SK Gaming, whatever it is. And they would say, yes, boss, but writing isn't fun. And writing for a website where you're barely making any money at all, especially, isn't fun. And writing for a website where every time you publish something, people find you on social media and call you a cunt is doubly not fun, triply not fun. So one of the problems you get is people just want to get it over with as quickly as possible. So every editor of an esports website, and probably any website ever since websites started, will find some people just copy-paste off a news website. And I remember having a very uncomfortable conversation with HLTV. They were livid because one of my fucking 1.6 writers had literally been copy-pasting HLTV reports, which I should have spotted because they were barely legible English. So it happens. You can't stop it. But I got rid of it. But once is a teaching exercise. If you've done it multiple times, you're just out. It's ultimately fucking... It's disqualifying. It ruins the reputation of the publication. And, we saw that, for example, didn't we, with IGN? IGN had that guy, Philip, whatever his name is, Philip Musin or whatever. And I've got that story here if you want to see it. Goodbye, TheScore Esports. We hardly knew ye. There it is. Former IGN editor finally admits to plagiarism issues apology. And he said he'd only done it once and said if you can find any other examples, and they did. Kotaku went through and found other examples, and he'd done it multiple times. That guy should be just disqualified from the industry. Plagiarism is one of the worst things you can do. You're not only stealing other people's work, it also means you're not doing any form of double checking of that work because you don't have access to the source, right? You're copying something and putting it out there. It's unbelievable how dangerous and damning it is. And there's a reason why plagiarists and fantasists generally get kicked out of journalism. Not so much in gaming where they seem to get promoted, but what can you do? Or politics for that matter. So the fact that TheScore Esports have provably committed at least 3 acts of plagiarism means that they should absolutely be removed. But the sad truth is they had a defense counsel. They had lawyers go, don't worry about it. Just fucking steel man this. And fucking they went and basically said to the person they plagiarized, we stand by what we did, essentially. We believe it's distinctly enough different, and we're not even admitting that we've ever even seen your report or not, despite them being near identical in concept and execution. So fuck those guys. But I can't blame them, by the way, for the score not even understanding what they do is plagiarism, because their average video sales so close to what plagiarism is that how could they ever be distinctive in terms of making a qualification between either one? The reality is TheScore looks at something that's happening, looks at something that's being talked about, and then when they research it, they go and they find endemic people that talk about these things, or reporters, or whatever it is, and they just take what they said, and then they write a script, change a few words, and then they say, and this happened, and then they run a clip of Thorin, and then this led to a bad community reaction, and then they run a clip of me saying this was a bad community reaction. What they did to Harsha, who's a guy I really like, Harsha from Overwatch, the Overwatch coach, is the worst I've ever seen, because they published on their website his interviews, but they only ran the quotes the player said and took his questions out and then didn't credit him at all. That goes beyond plagiarism into something else. It's insane. It's insane that they've got the brass balls to essentially try and hide behind fair use for that. I'm going to talk a little bit in a moment about YouTube and Duncan's points to that, but just a couple more examples from TheScore. This was them doing the story I broke on Rick Fox. And this is the why Riot Games is threatening action, the Echo Fox controversy explained. You'll see here, if I just scroll, if you will see me not mentioned at all. You will not see me mentioned at all in the description. Right.
Last month, Dexerto's Richard Lewis reported that Rick Fox was trying to leave the esports team he founded, Echo Fox, due to alleged racist behavior and threats made against his family by another then unnamed shareholder.
Now that's my mention. That's it. That's all I get. And yet every other aspect of this was from my follow-up pieces. Every other part of that video is from effectively my reporting. That's all I got. Fine, talk about the news I'm breaking, I guess. But that's literally all I got. You know, and they didn't reach out to me for any further clarification. You know, if you want to talk about news stories I'm breaking, I'm more than happy to fucking talk to you and talk you through it and make sure you've got all your ducks in a row and you've got all the relevant and up-to-date information. That's why I jokingly said to Colin McNeil when they put out a video about Yampy, literally the day or 2 days before I got a response from Valve saying the Finnish news reports are completely wrong. We've never admitted that he didn't cheat. You know, my reporting essentially forced Valve into issuing a statement, which I then published. TheScore didn't wait for that, even though I actively told them to wait for that. They just want to get the fucking clicks. Let me also give you an example of, is it this one? I want to give you an example of what they do where they try and pass off their reporting. Right. Oh, yeah, here we go. Another one on the Echo Fox story. And there's no need to be hyperbolic about this, but this is gibberish again.
We don't strive to lose every game. We want to win, but, I mean, to me, this is the win. The team is always represented a way to connect to my son.
Echo Fox was supposed to change esports. Built on a father and son's shared love for gaming, it was the org that was supposed to help validate esports to a mainstream audience with a sports icon.
Like, they're saying the biggest scandal in esports history. The biggest scandal in esports history, is it? Like nowhere near. Like, it's nonsense. It's a scandal, maybe. But then if you go through their channel, they have other ones. I found 3 of these where they say the biggest scandal in League of Legends. Echo Fox are a League of Legends team, so which one is it, guys? It's just hyperbole for the purposes of clickbait. Then I can give you an example of the exact same thing I'm talking about here. This is what I alluded to earlier. I broke a story about Astralis and all the problems they were having and how the players wanted to lose. So,
screen this video.
What the fuck is really happening with Astralis behind the rumors and the reports? Who do you ask? Who would really know, do you think?
Another question that's been making the rounds in Reddit, in Twitter threads, you name it, and that is, are they actually going to come back to Astralis? Well, when I asked Astralis sports director Casper Witt that question, he did not mince words.
But I don't care about people, what they think. I care about...
Brilliant. Great. Well, we're going to get to the bottom of that then. You've cracked the fucking case! We asked the murderer, did you kill someone? Fucking unreal. Like, that's the level the score's operating on. It's fucking mental. So, yeah. Absolutely ridiculous. And then, just as a final point before we start talking about all their YouTube fuckery, they created, I guess it's a podcast, I think, called Clouted. Right?
Big news in the world of CSGO right now. And on Wednesday, Colin, Dan, Devin, and I tackled...
Who broke that news? Oh, never mind.
Episode of Clouded on Twitch.
Right. Who are these people, and why are they experts in esports?
In the server, in all of those series.
Colin,
So
Keith,
not exactly
Devin
like a
Jones,
like
Daniel Rosen.
He just walked into
Why?
the
What
most
is going on here?
well-maintained
Who the fuck
Counter-Strike
are you,
history.
like, you know what I mean? You're the experts, are you? I guarantee I have more years in this industry than all of them combined. So maybe, like, do you want to bring on an expert? Do you want to bring on the journalist who breaks the story? No, we're the fucking score. We're the authority. So let's all have a little fucking circle jerk where we all sit around and analyze other people's work. They're a ridiculous company. The fact that they would ever try and present themselves as a serious news outlet, it should make you sick to your fucking stomach. They're just absolute idiots, a lot of them. I don't even think they've ever broken a story. Also as well, right? Like, here's one, right? Okay, I just remembered this one.
He's
right.
back.
So this is about, right? High Sky turned out to be 12 years old, and FaZe had lied about it, right? And Kevin Hitt, a separate journalist, had got proof that he was really 12. He was really underage, right? And so what they did is, the High Sky controversy explained the lie about FaZe's underage streamer. And they went through, right? And all they say is, oh, Tfue did a lawsuit, he's underage, Kevin Hitt proved it. And they didn't explain any of the bigger context. Meanwhile, do you know what I was doing when this story was breaking? Right? Because I wanted to know how it would impact on the industry. I sat down and no shit, I read this. The California Child Labor Laws Act of 2013. I read it from cover to fucking cover as if I was a law student. It's not a short document, guys. Because that's what journalists do. They repeated some lines from Tfue's lawsuit, Kevin Hitt's article, and then said, well, who knows what's going to happen? Well, I do, because I looked it up, you cunt. Let's talk now about the DMCA situation with Duncan, because I've also got some insight on that. YouTube is garbage if you're a individual creator that isn't backed by a big company and retained legal counsel. And this goes right the way up, by the way, even if you're somebody like if you're someone with like 500,000 followers, they don't value you. 1 million followers put you in what, like the top 10, 20,000 YouTubers on the channel, maybe not even that. Right? There's so many random channels that just have 1 million followers, and you're like, why? Like, this is a guy who just does plumbing on YouTube, 1 million followers, you know? People are just into that. So, somebody with 100,000, 200,000, 500,000, you got no chance. You got butt kissed. They don't give a fuck. So, what happened with Duncan was, after that guy sent him that spreadsheet that showed 72, 73 instances of them using his content, Duncan said, fuck it, I'm going to DMCA 50 of it. I'm going to just do the first 50 on the list. And by the way, Duncan is legally allowed to do that. There is no question if it is a false DMCA. It would only be a false DMCA if Duncan knew that was fair use going in, which he doesn't know it's fair use. In fact, he thinks it isn't fair use. Now, I connected him with someone legal who deals with this type of stuff, and they said, unfortunately, these big corporations do have a lot of protections, and fair use generally tends to go their way if they can use your clips. Because the big problem you have is it's not just being transformative. That's what everyone talks about. When you transform a clip, what that means is you take a clip and you turn it into something so distinctly different from its original form that it doesn't even matter how much you used its transformative content. Transformation is one of the defenses for a fair use exemption. But the other thing is they have this thing called illustration. And so if I make a point, let's say I'm recording a history video for kids and it's educational, and I say, oh, there was this funny Austrian man who made these outrageous speeches, you know, back in the day, and I use a clip of that. Well, the copyright holder might not want me to, but I've got a fair use exemption, or I can argue a fair use exemption, because no fair use exemption is a guarantee, by the way. I can say, well, look, I had to use that clip to prove that point. And they go, okay, well, that's illustrative, and you didn't use a lot of it. So actually, yeah, fair enough. Now, the thing that you know is fuckery. I'm going to tell you something about YouTube that you guys probably don't know, because I imagine you don't have YouTube channels. Right. as soon as Duncan DMCA'd a big channel, YouTube got in touch with him and said, yeah, we're not too sure about this, actually. They're absolute outrageous. Absolute outrageous. When you DMCA somebody, you go through an automated system that says YouTube must agree to support your DMCA in principle. Because it's not for them to determine if it's fair use or not. They are not a legal entity. They are not a court. They cannot make a decision. The fact that they went back to Duncan and basically said, yeah, it probably is fair use, mate, that is an example of power user privileges that no one else gets. And I would wager is legally dubious. So they're absolutely not allowed to get involved. What they're supposed to do is remove the videos and let the dispute be resolved by however it gets resolved. So then TheScore tried to have Thorin banned off the platform of YouTube, saying he was sending nuisance DMCAs. And that because he didn't understand fair use, there was no guarantee he wouldn't do it in future. Now, obviously, YouTube didn't dare agree to that and acquiesce to that, because that is a fucking payout that you just win all day. But the fact TheScore even tried that, even tried to flex on YouTube with their legal counsel, shows you that they are fucking scum. And yet, you might wonder, well, hang on, if it works like that for them, it must work like that for you. Let me tell you why you haven't seen episode 25 of I Hate It Here, or sometimes why VODs don't come out in a timely fashion. Why, for example, there are 3 more episodes of Enemy of the People waiting to come through. When I upload a video on YouTube, right, there are certain entities that will automatically flag you for stealing copyright, even if you use the tiniest fraction. And let me tell you, one of these entities is, I think it's CBS, whichever network Stephen Colbert is on. Anytime you use a clip of Stephen Colbert, it automatically says you're violating copyright. And you need to think about how ridiculous that is, because that cardboard cutout propagandist, DNCA operative, relative, fundraiser, cunt, he has a show where what does he do? He looks at other people's clips off the internet, off their TV shows, and sits there and goes, can you believe he said this? Can you believe he said that? Can you believe he said this? I'm doing comedy, not political operations, right? So he makes a living doing what you would attempt to do on YouTube. But here's how a DMCA process works. And this is how TheScore got away with something. I then say, and I've got a legal draft I use for every appeal. And it basically points out not only is it outrageous that they would claim this isn't fair use and exempt, that it is the exact same mechanics they use to make their content and their living. Right? And so, obviously, what they do is they don't challenge that. Because I'm right. But, do you know what they do? They wait for 30 days for the challenge to expire, as is their legal right. So they hit me with a bullshit DMCA. I have to counter-appeal. And then I have to sit for 30 days with my thumb up my ass, where they are not legally obligated to release my content. Why didn't that happen to TheScore? Their content was back up within 2 fucking days. The DMCA system is absolutely not fit for purpose in its current format and clearly favours big corporations and big people. And this is why TheScore can just act with absolute impunity. To make it clear, I don't give permission for any of my content to be used out of context from its original place under any circumstances whatsoever. Right? I want my content to be controlled by me. I want my messaging to be controlled by me. I believe I have a right to do that. And so I'm all for fair use. I'm all for whatever. If you keep using my content to make up for your fucking lack of insight into an industry, I should pull your fucking card. But I also know what I told Duncan when I connected him with the law guy. It is a waste of time. These people can do what they want. The only people that get to make decisions are you, essentially. The audience. You're the only people that can do anything about it. You're the only people that can hold them accountable. And the point is there's not enough of you because they make casual dog shit throwaway content off the sweat of other people's brow. And so if you boycott them, it don't matter. There's another 200,000 people that will click on that garbage. So they get away with it. But I had to talk about it because they've always been garbage. They've leveraged their money and their spending power to silence people and to threaten people's livelihoods. They have denigrated the work of actual award-winning journalists in the space. And now they seem content to make dog shit throwaway videos that are basically carbon copies of content other people make much better. So that is that. Case closed. The truth. TM Richard Lewis.